Hi and welcome to this video where I'm going to be using one of these, which is a Sykes Pickavant back pressure tester and also a vacuum tester. And the idea behind this is I've been driving this black Mini and in comparison to the silver Mini it seems extremely sluggish. Now I realise the silver Mini is a Cooper and has 114 brake horsepower, and this one is the One, which only has 89 horsepower, so there is a difference of 25 brake horsepower. So I'm not sure if it's that, perhaps the introduction of E10 petrol as well, I'm not sure, but because there is such a difference between the two cars, I want to run a catalytic converter back pressure test. Now to do this we have two oxygen sensors in the exhaust. We've got one that's between the exhaust manifold and the cat, and then one after the cat which is like a confirmation sensor. So it's the first one we need to remove, and to remove it we will need to use one of these, which is like a 22mm socket with a slit down the side. So we remove the oxygen sensor, we put the pressure gauge in, and then the idea is we start the engine and see how much back pressure there is between the manifold and the cat. Now there shouldn't really be any more than 1 psi at tick over. Now if it passes that test we then increase the revs to 2,500, and hopefully we won't see any more pressure there more than 2.5 psi. Obviously anything more than that in each of those tests means that we've probably very likely got a blocked catalytic converter, which would then give me an answer as to why this seems sluggish. So that's basically what this video is about, and hope you enjoy it, and thank you for watching. So we'll take a quick look at this Sykes Pickavant catalytic converter back pressure tester, and that's what you get in the kit. And then we'll have a quick look at the oxygen sensor removal sockets, so that gives you an idea. So first job is to remove the oxygen sensor from the silver R50 Cooper, and I'll be using this as my test car. So I was rather hoping that I might be able to actually access the oxygen sensor from within the bonnet, but sadly it's a little bit tucked away down there at the back. So we'll pop it onto low rise ramps, and then this enables me to get my trolley jack under there a lot easier. So what I'm going to do is just disconnect the oxygen sensor, because as I start to undo it underneath the car I don't want to twist that cable, which could obviously possibly snap, and then I would need a new sensor. So as per the manual we'll jack the car up and access everything from underneath. So we'll just pop our trusty axle stands under there, make sure the car's safe. So your car may be different to this, you may not need to actually go under the car, but on the Mini sadly you do. Okay then, so let's get the oxygen sensor socket, and it's a 22mm on the Mini. There are other sizes like a 27 and a 29, but it's the 22 for this car. So I'll just show you where it is on the Mini. It's up there, tucked away quite nicely. So BMW do actually have a special torque wrench for this, because of it being located where it is. But anyway, so we'll try with what we've got. Removing the sensors a lot easier than actually tightening it back up using a torque wrench. So we've got that on there, and it is very tight. So I've been using the second camera through the wheel arch just so you can actually peer in there to where I'm actually working. Managed to get it loose now. So what you've got to do now is obviously just be careful of the wires. As you start to rotate that out, you don't actually start bunching the wires up and twisting them and then possibly snapping them. So make sure the cable is always slack as you rotate. Right, so there we are, that sensor's out. That one's made by NTK. I don't know if that's the original or a replacement, but that's what we've got there. So now to fit the test gauge adapter and then the test gauge. So we have two adapters in this set, and one is an M12 and one is an M18. And for the Mini it's an M18. So we need to pop that adapter in place of the oxygen sensor, and then that'll be tightened with a 19mm spanner. And it doesn't need to be tightened too much, just so that it's sort of a snug fit. So we'll pop that in there. So ideally you want a long flexible head ratchet here, just to make its way up there. And just give it a little snug tighten there. And then what we can do is put the gauge in. Now this can be a bit trickier actually, because you've got to try and watch the angle of the pipe. There's not much flexibility at the end of the pipe, so you need to try and get the pipe to go down the engine bay as straight as possible towards the adapter. So now this bit was actually almost impossible to video, because it was, as you can see, I'm coming in at the wrong angle there, and I had to actually re-thread it back down further away from the adapter. But then I actually did get it on there, and again that's a 19mm spanner. Doesn't need to be too tight, just a snug fit again. Quite awkward there to actually get in. There we go. So we should be on to testing now. So I'm going to reconnect the O2 sensor in the logic that this way it shouldn't give me an error code in the ECU saying that the sensor's disconnected. So I'll still keep it connected, and by doing that I didn't get an error code, which was quite useful. Otherwise you may have to use diagnostics to turn that code back off. Right then, so this is the test, and everything's actually looking okay there at tick over. We're well in the black. Just take it up to 2,500 revs, and then the car will stall. Here we go. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. So I've run out of petrol yet again. I did that on my first video where I was doing the oil pressure test. I think it's because the car's up in the air, so all the fuel's right at the back. Try again now. Okay, so we don't want over 1 psi at tick over, and we don't want over 2.5 psi at 2,500 revs. And so far everything is looking absolutely in the black, which is perfect. So I know that the gauge is working and everything seems correct on this car. So the results on my test Mini were 1 psi at tick over, 2,500 RPM and 4,000 RPM. So all looking good. Now to replace the oxygen sensor and reconnect. So now I just need to remove the gauge and then remove that adapter, and then tighten the O2 sensor back in, and on the Mini that's 39 Newton meters. And this can actually be rather tricky, because you need to use these type of crow's foot adapters at 90 degrees. Now I couldn't actually get that in there, so in the end I had to use a spanner. But if you were to use it straight ahead, you would effectively be lengthening the length of the torque wrench, and then you'd be over tightening it. So unless you backed off the Newton meters on the actual torque wrench to allow for that extra length, which you could do, the BMW torque wrench is one that keeps it straight ahead. So you might need to just do a bit of math there and adjust it, or just do it hand tight. Right then, so now having a baseline using the Mini Cooper, I can run the same tests on the black Mini 1. This should be interesting. Okay then, so we'll pop her onto the ramps. I'll cut most of this out because we've obviously seen the process before. I'll take her up here, do a little bit of dancing on the ramps. Handbrake works at least, that's a bit better. So we'll speed most of this up now, because we know what we're going to do. So we just get our gauge, get our adapter, feed it back down, and as if by magic, it's all done. So now for the tests. See what we get. And we're comfortably there in the black. Let's take that to 2,500 RPM. We're still in the black. And then, just for the fun of it, we'll take it up to 4,000 RPM. Just to see what we get. And we're still in the black. So there doesn't seem to be any blockage on this car. Just appears to be somewhat slow. Right then. Yeah, so the Mini Cooper has a lot more perk about it compared to the Mini 1. That's interesting. So to conclude, it would appear that there was no restrictions in the exhaust of the black Mini 1, and it was just me not realising quite how much more lively the Cooper is to drive over the lower powered 1 model. Had there been a high PSI reading, I would have then removed the second oxygen sensor and repeated the test to see if the pressure dropped, indicating a blocked catalytic converter, or if still high, possibly indicating a faulty exhaust muffler further down the line. The reason I reconnected the oxygen sensor before running the engine in both tests is to avoid an engine malfunction registering in the ECU that could possibly need a diagnostic tool to reset afterwards. So here's some reference photographs which you can pause to view for longer. So here's the second oxygen sensor, and here we are at the first one before the cat, and this is the second one between the cat and the muffler, and here is the oxygen sensors. So I've got a few close-up photos of this. As you can see, there's 4 wires connected to that. And there's the tip, and this is how it fits into the socket. Just to show you, that's a 22mm socket, and there's the cutout down the side, and then onto the catalytic back pressure tester kit. These are the parts you get in the kit. So 2 of those are like blanking plugs. Here's an adapter set that you can bolt onto the exhaust. So there's 2 blanking plugs there and 2 different size adapters. And there's that bolt-on adapter there. And that's the gauge. And here's the oxygen sensor kit I use, showing you the different sizes that you get and the cutouts. So you've been watching how to use a back pressure gauge to check for exhaust restrictions. And thank you for watching, and I hope this video helps you service and maintain your car within your budget. This video was filmed and edited by me, Mark Savage, in January 2022, and I can be found on Instagram and Facebook as Coats and Gators.